the emotional bar my last partner set for the next. I was out with a friend of mine for lunch today, and we had an interesting conversation, as guys do, talking about career and life and success and happiness. And eventually, the conversation circled around to relationships. And he's admittedly had a string of bad ones. And when I say bad, I need to qualify that a little bit. Bad for him. And he asked me about my last, handful of relationships. And I felt the pull, the temptation to go down a rabbit hole of blaming and, offering my point of view as to why they didn't work out. And I noticed that trap started to open up in front of me, and I chose to go a different route. And so this conversation will be a little bit about how my most recent partner set the emotional bar for my next partner in a couple of really meaningful ways. So I'm going to leave her name out of it. I'm going to leave her profession out of it. But what I will say is she's lovely and she's beautiful and kind and all of these things. And so I want to give her credit where credit's due. And I'm not going to get into, why the relationship ended. That's not really germane to the conversation. I think what I really want to demonstrate here is she left such a lasting impression on me that, the floor of emotional intelligence for my next partner has been raised pretty significantly. So a little bit about me, I've been through a couple of marriages and, a couple of dozen relationships, and I fall into the trap, as everybody else often does, of blaming. I feel this way because of something that you did, or I'm mad because you didn't do the laundry or do the day, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And this relationship was a little bit different from emotionally. I mean, I'd been growing into this direction. It's probably why I attracted this person to begin with for a lot of years. And so there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm not going to spend any time here doing that. I want to focus in on the floor that she raised for me. So she did these things by saying and demonstrating a high level of emotional intelligence and attunement. One of the most important things that she would say a lot was, I make it mean. I make it mean when I see this behavior from you. I make it mean that you're distant, or you're angry, or you're frustrated with me, or you're disappointed. And the value of her leading with that I make it mean statement was that she immediately took ownership of her own interpretation of my behavior. She didn't claim it as objective reality. She was able to separate what happened from how she felt about it. And the value of that is, obvious, but, she was creating a story about what was going on. And rather than just telling me the story and how it made her feel, she basically took ownership for the story that she was creating right out of the gate. Like, she would lead with, I make it mean. And so what that essentially did was it treated her perception as not objective truth, but more of a creation that she was, that she was trying to stop herself from projecting onto me. It demonstrated a very high level of self-awareness and, frankly, a critical level of vulnerability she was expressing. Right? Like, I've had these experiences in my life, and they've written into my source code to a point where, I'm making something mean something other than what it is in reality. And I took that as such a high level of emotional responsibility, just basically taking full ownership of her meaning making. And that was incredible to experience. Another thing that she would say a lot was, I perceive you as. And, what this does is it establishes a high level of emotional attunement. So, we would go out to dinner or something, and we'd be locked into a conversation, and then something would happen. I'm not sure what. And then I would maybe tune out for a second, and she would kind of pause and look at me, hold my hand and smile and say, I perceive you as being checked out. When I said this, something happened, and I wanted to check in with you to make sure that that was true. And what she's really doing, what she's communicating with me, what she's saying without saying, is that she's really paying attention to who I am underneath my words and underneath my behavior. And basically she's telling me that, she was curious enough about me to see who I really am, rather than the one that is demonstrating a behavior that she's reacting to. Like the version of me that is present in that moment isn't the real me, and she's seeing through that. And being able to basically ask for me back, ask for my presence back in such a really elegant way, really helped demonstrate for me that, real femininity has that ability to attune to you emotionally. And when you're not present, when the masculine isn't present, she can bring you back in a really elegant way that demonstrates, her desire for you to be present, and that, she's taking ownership of how her perception of you and able to express it. Super high level of emotional intelligence. And another thing she used to say all the time was, tell me something vulnerable. And at first I used to think it was a test. I still think it was a test, but a healthy test. What she was doing was expressing her needs for emotional connection. And that was the primary way that it was met for her, was to demonstrate some level of vulnerability. The test part was make sure that I'm not caving in or collapsing into the feelings of that vulnerable expression as I was feeling them, right? So, for example, if something bad happened at work, she would want to know about it, and she would want to know how that made me feel. But what she was really paying attention to was not just how I'm communicating that to her, and how I was like setting the armor down to, just be in that moment a full expression of my vulnerability, like what's making me sad or mad or hurt or whatever. But also that I'm not caving in to that inner felt sense of pain or anger or whatever. Like that, there's not a emotional collapse happening where I'm angry in that moment because of something that happened earlier in the day that I don't have to re-feel that feeling. I can just tell her how it made me feel in that moment and how it still be making me feel, but I can still be present and locked in and loving and connected with her. And so those three things really set a higher emotional floor for what I'll be looking for in my next partner. The things I took away from these interactions and my time with her and having these expressions of emotional intelligence really was that, vulnerability is a strength. The ability to express vulnerability, to demonstrate a willingness to be seen without giving in to the emotions that vulnerability may stir up. Basically, it could be true that I'm angry, or this thing that happened earlier in the day has made me angry, but I get to retain responsibility for what's happening for me in that moment. And so I can express that I'm angry and do it with a smile on my face, as an example. And the other thing is, the thing that I really took away from this was that it's really important to take full ownership for your own inner experience, no matter who you are, man, woman, child, adult, whatever, or, your inner experience is basically how you perceive the entire world, right? It's pure subjectivity. And it's easy for us to project onto the world when we come in contact with reality, to put our inner world into the world and say, you're the reason, or you're the cause, or you're the instigator for my inner experience. And when you take ownership of your own inner experience and you have the ability to communicate that inner experience and what's going on for you in a way that's elegant, you're actually inviting them to engage you with it. If you go to your partner and you tell them, I'm upset and here's the reasons why, but you're not doing it full of upsetness, they'll be more willing to engage with you in it. If the only if the only thing that they have the grasp is to engage with your inner experience is the emotion that you're presenting to them in the moment. If you're angry and you're acting angrily at them, not a very high likelihood they're going to engage with you in it. Not a very high likelihood that they're going to, you know, give you the help that you're probably asking for or seeking from them. So to wrap all of this up, you know, I really want to thank her for kind of opening my eyes to what is possible in an intimate relationship, how the masculine, the man, could be healed emotionally by the presence of emotional intelligence in their woman, in the feminine. And when it's presented in this really interesting and special way, at least for me, in my experience, it opened my eyes to what's possible in an intimate relationship. And so, you know, going forward, it's actually created an update in terms of what I'm seeking in a partner going forward. And it's kind of revelatory. I think what it also did, for better or for worse, is it dramatically reduced the number of qualified candidates for my next partner. You know, if you look on social media and if you look out in the world, there isn't a whole lot of emotional intelligence going on. That's not to, you know, I'm not trying to throw shade at women or the feminine, but at least in my experience, what I was seeking in the past led itself to maybe, and again, my contribution as well. I was not very emotional intelligent in my past. In many relationships, I led with emotion, and I was unwilling to take ownership for it, and that's completely changed for me. So, anyway, I hope this is useful, and I hope this finds you well.